Good morning and welcome to Tech Talk Tuesday. I am Tracy Kraushorn, your host. This is Wayne Kraushorn.
Good morning.
And we have a special guest with us today. But before I introduce him, I just want to let you know, as always, we are here to educate and support our business community with all things IT. IT is ever changing, and so we want to make sure that you're up to date on everything.
All things IT and today marketing.
Yes. If you have any questions, please submit them below. We'll get to those at the end. And without further ado, I would love to introduce to you our special guest today. His name is Steve Calkins with Electra Marketing. He has 30 years plus 30 years in the media marketing and advertising industry. He's been an owner and creative director of advertising agencies. His management roles in broadcast, television, radio, and cable. Some of his favorite things to do are to be with his family. He loves music, art, movies, and home improvement projects, which we were just talking about.
Yeah, music. You have a record label at one time?
Yes, I did work for Electra Asylum Records for about 5 years.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
It was a fun job.
Yeah.
Awesome. Electra
Marketing. That's the name of my company. I had so much fun, I decided to name my marketing agency after my record label. So that's why it's Electra Marketing.
I love it. I love it.
Okay.
Well, Steve, you guys do branding and strategy, search engine optimization, which is better known as SEO, web development, social marketing, content marketing, digital advertising, online management, and video marketing. I think that about covers it, right?
I think that pretty much does. I also do the janitorial work around here, so whatever needs to be done.
You too?
As good CEOs do. Well, today we are going to be diving into some marketing and how it relates to IT. And our first question goes to you, Steve. Why is it important to ensure your website is secure?
Well, first, I just want to say thanks for having me. It's fun to be on Facebook Live and YouTube Live and wherever this thing is. But let's back up a minute and think about the scope of the problem. There's over 1.5 billion websites out there. And in order for people to find the information that they want that's relevant to their needs, they rely on search engines. Yeah. Now, since July of 2018, a little bit more than 2 years ago, every website without an SSL, that's a secure sockets layer, secure website hosting. Otherwise, you might see HTTPS in the URL bar. But if you don't have that, Google is flagging those sites as being insecure. Now, what that means is they receive an SEO penalty, a search engine optimization penalty. Which makes it harder for those sites to reach new prospects and customers. So if you don't have an SSL certificate, if you're not hosted on HTTPS, you are in fact hurting yourself because you're missing opportunities to reach new customers and prospects. Now, it gets even worse because if you'll notice when you're browsing the web, a lot of times you look up in that URL bar and before the address, it says not secure. If you're using Firefox or if you're using Chrome or any of the popular browsers, it says not secure. 80% of site visitors will not submit any kind of personal information on a site that has not secure in the URL bar. They're just scared. And that's intentional on Google's part. They want you to be scared because they don't want you to put your personal information at risk. 56% of all internet traffic comes from automated sources such as hacking tools, spammers, impersonators, and bots. There's an attack every 39 seconds on the web. And think of it this way. These hackers are not targeting the business per se. They're targeting that business's customers. And consumers kind of instinctively know this, so they won't submit a contact form where they're given any kind of personal information on a site that's not secure. So, it's a problem.
Yeah.
So Wayne, how big of a problem is website security?
Well, as Steve was saying, it's I just read something that said, upwards to 50,000 websites get hacked every single day. And the thing is, nearly half of those are small business. There's a common perception that a lot of people have is that, cyber criminals aren't worried about small business. No, they typically attack them because they're probably not investing as much in their security. So, and there's lots of ways these companies are hacking websites. A couple of them, one is spamming. A lot of us think of spamming as that annoying little pop-up that happens when you're on the web. But a lot of times what will happen is they'll embed links back to other websites in like comment sections, which those sites have less than nice means or intentions. So they're trying to direct you back to something that is going to potentially infect your system. And then there's viruses and malware. Those get embedded into links on websites, and the website owner doesn't even know that it exists, and neither does the person who's actually visiting the website. So and there are Steve, correct me if I'm wrong, but Google actually has these crawlers that run around websites, and they look for these sorts of things, and they will find sites that are not secure. And there you go, back to the report it back in the SEO penalty.
Absolutely, and just to piggyback onto what you were just saying, you'll notice sometimes if you're using Google Chrome, sometimes that not secure warning comes up in red. And that can be an indicator that Google has identified that site as possibly having been hacked already.
Yeah.
So, and then that's like a double penalty, if you will, in terms of your SEO.
Right.
Interesting. Yeah, I think I've had that happen where I go to a website and it comes up with a white screen and a red thing. It just says it's not secure, and then there's a little button that says "Go back to security."
And it's interesting too because small businesses have become the victim of this, largely due to their own lack of knowledge about the problem. There's still an estimated 30% of small business websites that are not on secure hosts.
Yeah.
It's a very simple thing that they can do themselves at little or no expense.
Yeah.
I think it's also important to note that often people will they'll go to hit a website and you'll get the box that says they don't have a valid SSL certificate, security certificate. And so, Steve, you want to talk about a little bit of what that means and what a website can do to make sure it has a valid certificate, or is that still an issue anymore?
It is an issue, but generally, if you're with a reputable hosting service, and you do sign up for a secure hosting service, an HTTPS, you're going to be covered. Can those still be hacked? Can those still be compromised? Yes, but if you're with a reputable hosting service, you're going to be okay. Now there are different types of hosts. We can get into that later on. I don't know if you want to talk about that now. Between dedicated hosts, and shared hosts, and cloud hosts, and VPN hosts. There's a lot of different levels, if you will, of security. Most small businesses probably are going to be fine on a shared host situation with a reputable hosting service.
Okay.
So, Steve, what are some other things businesses can do to protect their website?
Well, aside from making sure that you're, it says HTTPS, that you have a secure host. Make sure that your website software, your CMS, for about 40% of the web, that's going to be WordPress. Make sure that it's up to date, and make sure your theme is up to date. Some themes, because WordPress is open source, which means anybody can get in there and offer any improvements or any new themes or plugins. That's a great thing because it keeps costs low and it keeps a lot of options open for web developers. But the downside is that sometimes themes are developed, and because they're not popular or because the person who developed them decides to do something else for a living, those themes might not be supported. And unsupported themes get out of date, and then they become vulnerable to hackers. Also good to work with a reputable web developer, regardless of whether it's WordPress or whatever CMS, content management system you're using, because they will make sure that those backdoors that hackers exploit are sealed up tight. So that's the first thing. Now, this may sound real obvious because you hear it with regard to just about every online activity, but make sure that your admin access to your website is limited to just a select few individuals, and make sure that you change your login credentials regularly. This will help protect you against hackers. We already talked about it a little bit, but pick a reputable and reliable and secure hosting service. I'm working with a client right now building a new website for them. They worked with a previous marketing agency about 5 years ago for the current website that I'm building the replacement for. And that website was actually hosted at that marketing agency. And this is a lot more common than you'd like to think. But here's what happens is this is not a marketing agency's area of expertise. Hosting requires a certain degree of vigilance, a certain skill set. It requires 24/7 hands and eyes on to keep it secure. So if you're being hosted by your friend or your neighbor or your marketing agency, that's probably not an ideal solution for you in terms of security and in terms of reliability. So get with a reliable, reputable host. And then we already talked about, shared versus dedicated a little bit. There are other options, but unless your site is getting more than 300,000 or 400,000 views per month, you're probably going to be good on a shared server.
Okay.
Awesome. Wayne, are there any tools that an MSP can provide?
Yes. So, I think first and foremost, for the user side, make sure you have a good active antivirus. I know we talk about that, seems like almost every week, but it's so important. That's kind of the job of it, to protect you, because, you think of it as we've used the analogy before, kind of a drug sniffing dog, right? You go to a website and it's making sure that nothing's trying to be downloaded onto your PC. So make sure on the user side that you do have active antivirus. And then, we talk about firewalls a lot. Now, firewalls that really come in three flavors. You've got a hardware firewall. A lot of offices and even data centers will use that. They have software versions of those firewalls. And they have something called WAFs, web application firewalls. So what a web application firewall, well, it's first, the regular firewall, one of the main functions of it is to separate the inside from the outside and create that barrier that makes it impossible to penetrate in. So it limits exposed ports that hackers can get in through back doors and get in and put things into a website. The web application firewall, think of it as it's a server somewhere where everybody who, you're going to abcwebsite.com. DNS directs you over to this service, and this service will then be the intermediary to take you over to the actual website. So it monitors and filters and even blocks all the traffic through. Now, the web application firewall might sound a lot like a firewall, but really the two are more complementary. And web application firewalls, most Fortune 500 companies, even Fortune 5,000 companies will use, there's a lot of them that use this technology. So that's something you can do. We often talk disaster recovery, right? So have a backup, Have a good up-to-date backup. If something happens, you're hacked, you're taken down, whatever, you can always recover from it more quickly. Steve mentioned HTTPS. Sometimes people don't understand. They'll say, well, I have HTTP. Well, they're similar, but really HTTPS adds encryption, which is just that extra layer. So Steve's absolutely right on that. You need to have that. You can really limit file uploads as much as possible. Now, some sites rely on a lot. You can upload POs for purchasing websites and things of that nature. And so, the more you can limit what can be uploaded into the site, the better off you're going to be. If you do have to be open to uploads, then you have to add extra layers of security, and that's goes right into what Steve's saying. Somebody really have to know what they're doing on the security side, to be able to protect you from that. Steve's absolutely right. Limit the amount of users as much as possible. And the ones that have to have access have individual logon credentials. To have accountability among them. And, Steve mentioned CMS, the content management system. There are a lot of settings, customized settings that you can get in. Don't just accept the defaults. There's stuff on comment settings and file permissions and all sorts of stuff in there. These need to be tailored to the needs of your particular website. So there's lots of things that you can do to make a better experience for you and for the users that come to your site.
Awesome.
Yeah, you make a really good point. WordPress and other CMSs have become so user-friendly that most people who can operate Microsoft Office products can build and operate their own website. Mm-hmm. And the danger is that you've got folks who now think that they're their own web developer, but they don't have the skill set or the experience to know about all of those different settings and plugins and things that leave their sites vulnerable. And that's where it's important to work with a professional that knows what they're doing. It's kind of the same thing as what happened when we got smartphones with cameras, right? Everybody all of a sudden was a photographer.
Yeah. Exactly.
But we know there's a difference between a professional photographer and someone who just snaps shots with their iPhone.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's right up Tracy's alley. She knows. Oh, I've heard her talk about that a lot.
Yeah,
that's funny.
So, Steve, you also have some things to share about marketing virtually during this pandemic.
Yeah, I did want to talk about this a bit. It's unfortunate, and this is going to probably rub some people the wrong way or disappoint some people, but we got to address some marketing misconceptions first. If you have not had a good marketing strategy in place, regardless of the power of the digital tools at our disposal, there is no quick overnight fix for what we are facing now. Okay, so digital marketing strategies like SEO, like social media optimization, SMO, these are not quick fix solutions that are going to make a huge difference overnight for your business. These are great tools. They're powerful tools. They can have an impact, but any marketer will tell you that that it takes 3 to 4 months to see significant results from a plan. If you had a plan in place before the pandemic and you know who your audience is and you've adjusted accordingly, you're in great shape. Or even if you saw what was coming 6 or 8 months ago and put a plan in place then. I'm not going to say it's too late now, because there's always things that you can do, and who knows how long this current situation is going to go on. But let's be reasonable about our expectations. So that said, pandemic or no, here's some marketing advice that I'd like to share. First, understand your audience. Who are they? Beyond age, sex, and occupation and income, those kind of standard demographic questions, who are they? What do they believe in? What motivates them? What tribes do they belong to use Seth Godin's framework? And if you haven't read the book Tribes by Seth Godin, I highly recommend it. It's one of the quickest reads and most insightful reads about marketing in today's world that you will find. But then you need to assess whether your product or service is still in demand and how has that demand changed as the result of the novel coronavirus situation that we're in. Look at your website traffic. Where is it coming from? If you're not using Google Analytics, you need to be. This will give you some deep insight into who your prospective customers are. Where are they coming from? That means, are they coming from organic search? Are they coming from links to other websites? Are they coming by typing your URL in directly? And what do they do when they get there? What pages do they linger on? Are they completing forms? All of this information will tell you a lot about who they are and how to get in front of them. These steps will help you gain insights into the behavior and develop an appropriate marketing response. Now, in terms of COVID-specific things, all of those qualifications, as I stated, I'm advising many clients right now to increase their focus on pay-per-click campaigns. And here's why. It's becoming way more cost-effective. What's happened as a result of supply chains being constrained is that major brands, because they can't get the supply that they once had, they are cutting back on their PPC campaigns. So it's a simple supply and demand situation. You have major players backing off, which leaves a lot of search terms available for lower auction prices, which means that you get a bigger yield on your pay-per-click ad campaigns right now. So that's one area where we're seeing the pandemic become an advantage for aggressive and strategic marketers is with pay-per-click. Another thing that we're seeing, and this is something we were talking about in the warm-up before the show, is I'm currently doing animated video production for a client right now, and I'm finding that the cost of doing that production is way below what it would have been pre-pandemic, because the talent is not in demand as much. As the previous scenario with the supply chain constraints, we're seeing lower demand on graphic designers, animators, voice talent, music talent. I can bring the pieces together for 30 to 50% less than it would have been pre-pandemic. So if you want to add video to your website, which is very compelling and very engaging, it's the number one thing that keeps people on a website. Now is the time to really look into doing that. So there's a few things that can be done as a result of the pandemic, but these are not miracle cures.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So it's a very consultative process. So Steve, how do people find you if they want to consult with you?
Yeah, you can find me at www.electramark.com, ELEKTRAMARK, just like the old record label with a K, not a C. So that's the best place to find me. There's a pretty hefty blog section, so you can do some exploring and some learning on your own. Consultations are always free of charge. And if I can show you how to do it yourself and to save you some money, I'll happily do that. Visit me online. There's also a quick and easy make an appointment button there. It takes you right to my Calendly calendar. So if you need 30 minutes of my time for a free phone consult, I'm available to do that.
That's awesome.
Would you repeat your website one more time, please?
Yes, it's www.electramark.com, ELEKTRAMARK.
Very good. Steve, thank you so much for joining us today. It's been very informative.
Yeah, thank you.
Being here. Wayne, tell us what's coming up next week.
Well, we talk a lot about managed services and what they are. And, we're going to dive into the different forms of managed services, co-managed services, and, who should be considering them. And it's not for everyone, but kind of some of the advantages and benefits that they can bring.
Awesome.
So we will dive into that.
Very good. Well, that concludes our program for today. Thank you so much for joining us. Again, Steve, thank you. It was a pleasure. And you guys have a great week, and we'll see you next Tuesday.
Thank you.